Hello, my dear Franken friends, and welcome to Spookyou, your one-stop shop for all things ghastly and ghoulish. I'm your host, Barnabus Vixen. How horrible of you to join us. Curl up, invite your friends, and by all means, make sure those lights are out. That way it's harder to tell what may or may not be lurking around you. There's nothing like a good mystery, am I right? Tonight will feature a singular tale of devilish design curated by those wicked weavers of woe. And without further ado, allow me to pass the reins on over to our vivacious voiceover virtuoso, FALCO, for tonight's sinister story. Please keep all limbs and side covers at all times. We wouldn't want anything to go missing now, would we?
They finally caught me in Salt Lake City 10 months ago, only a few hours after I arrived. I arrived that night and checked into a cheap motel, intending to repeat the process of staying for a few weeks, finding temporary work and hunting down any shadow faces I encountered, as I had a dozen times before. I'd replaced my vehicle several times over by then, always dumping it where it wouldn't be found, usually by pushing it into a nearby body of water when no one was around, and then buying a new one from a private seller in the classifieds, always paying cash. I was augmenting my irregular day laborer and construction income with the cash I took off my victims. When the tag expired, I would just steal a current sticker off the plate of a car parked in a long-term parking garage, and then replace that one with a different sticker I stole off a car in a different parking garage so it wouldn't be noticed so soon. The license number on the sticker didn't match the one on the plate, of course, but that wasn't something anyone would notice from a distance. By then, I was driving a white 2003 Chevy Express cargo van where I kept the tools I used to interrogate and dispatch the shadow faces. Pliers, blowtorch, assorted knives, hammers, saws, flares, gasoline, etc. Sometimes I even killed them in the back of the van itself and then dumped their bodies where I knew they would be found. In hindsight, I guess that was a pretty stupid choice. I changed my appearance yet again, dyeing my hair gray and growing a goatee, and gave the motel clerk a new fake name I had come up with while driving to the city. I felt reasonably confident he wouldn't recognize me, and under normal circumstances, he probably wouldn't have, except for plain bad luck and timing. What I wasn't aware of was that the clerk had just seen an episode of America's Most Wanted, profiling yours truly and his illustrious career as the most notorious serial killer in the 21st century, which is probably too premature a title to bestow upon me. It's still early and who knows what sickos might come out of the woodwork before this century's over. He spotted a small but distinctive scar high on my forehead, a souvenir of the beating that robbed me of my sight as a child, and that was all it took. He played it cool and didn't let on, taking my cash and giving me my room key. He waited a couple hours, allowing time to make sure I was asleep before calling the police. I went to my room without even the slightest inkling that I was fucked and that my long run had come to an end. I entered my room, which was really no different from the scores of other cheap motels I had stayed at during the past 7 years. A single bed, tacky paintings on the wall, stained carpet spotted with cigarette burns, a TV distantly, muffled by the walls. I could hear music pulsing from one of the neighboring rooms. I was able to identify the song and it made me grin rather morbidly. An old 70s song from a group I never listened to, the Talking Heads. The song was called Psycho Killer. How appropriate. I tossed my bag down on the bed and turned on the TV. I watched it, deeply disturbed by what I saw. They were on all of the channels, hundreds of them, more of them than I could ever remember seeing before. I could swear some of the actors and actresses in the movies I saw on the cable channels, who had been human before, were now shadow faces. I switched to the news and stared at the pompous, smug son of a bitch who calls himself the president, making a speech, his red eyes smoldering in the dark recesses of his shadow face beneath that ridiculous blonde toupee he wears. I switched the TV off, thinking. I felt a deep surge of utter hopelessness. They were increasing rapidly, much faster than I had anticipated. The cities were crawling with them now. Every time I was in my car driving down the streets, I spotted them, in crowds and in stores and shops and businesses and driving their own cars. It wasn't just mostly the affluent anymore either. They were infiltrating the working class too. Construction workers and maintenance workers and sanitation workers, fast food clerks and street vendors and security guards and postal workers and even the police. For the first time, I wondered if what I was doing was making any difference at all. I didn't think it was. There were too many of them, and as far as I knew, now that Jeremy was dead, I was the only one standing against them. Jeremy's words from that long ago meeting echoed in my mind. What good can two guys do fighting these things on their own? Except now it was just one guy. Me. I wondered if it was possible the shadow faces I had already killed, some 40 of them, might just be finding new human hosts to possess. How could I ever hope to get ahead on my own? Even if everyone was aware of what was going on and banded together to defeat them, what good would that accomplish if these things could just find new bodies? I went to bed and fell into a troubled sleep. What seemed like only minutes after I had drifted off, I was awoken with a start by a jarring commotion.
Glad I caught you, dear listener. I've got an important announcement. We here at Spookyou, well, more specifically, I, have partnered up with Post Brand Cereals to bring you a nutritious and heart-healthy breakfast blend. Introducing BARNABUS Flakes, an important part in a balanced breakfast. Why, they're graciously coated in a synthetic sugar that almost tastes like the real thing. With key vitamins and nutrients that have been woven together from various animal and plant specimens in a lab deep under the earth, why would you ever need to eat anything else? Barnabas Flakes are here to curb that appetite and completely replace your meal regimen. Just a bowl at breakfast, lunch, and dinner will satisfy your most basic needs. And the best part? There's a prize in every box. I mean, who doesn't like surprise organs and bone matter? We sure do. Call now and we'll throw in 3 boxes for the price of 4. Just use the code phrase, "I pledge my life to your cause," when the operator asks. Barnabas Flakes. Hear me and obey. Spookyou is not responsible for any abnormalities nor any fatal side effects that may occur upon consumption of our cereal. Blackouts are completely normal, as is complete obedience. Please consult your doctor if you begin growing hair in places you wouldn't expect. Processing and handling charged separately.
The sounds of splintering wood and shattering glass. I bolted upright in bed and found myself blinded by a dozen flashlights mounted on a dozen high-powered rifles, aimed at me by the dozen large men wearing SWAT armor and helmets that surrounded my bed.
Police, don't move!
A voice bellowed. I wanted to believe I was having a nightmare, but I knew I wasn't. It was over. Simple as that.
Put your hands up,
the voice demanded. I complied. Resigned. I was brought first to the city police station to be booked. My fingerprints and mugshots were taken. Then, when they had confirmed that I was who they suspected I was, they drove me, hands cuffed, ankles shackled, in an armored van with a half-dozen police deputy escorts to the county jail where I was taken to a special cell. The story had broke and the media had arrived in full force, cameras flashing, reporters hurling questions as I was led into the building. I was under constant supervision both by the police and the CCTV cameras that monitored my cell. I sat there silently, calmly awaiting whatever came next. I was taken several times to an interrogation room where I was questioned, first by the police and then, when they arrived, the FBI. I held nothing back. There was no point in denying anything. They knew who I was and had all the evidence they needed in the back of my van. I confessed to everything, answering their questions calmly, even directing them to the locations where several of my victims who had not yet been recovered could be found. The only thing I didn't tell them was my motive. What was the point? All the people I spoke to were, thank God, human, but they wouldn't believe me. Looking back, it probably would have been to my advantage to tell them the truth. At least then my lawyer could have copped an insanity plea and I might be able to avoid execution. But that probably wouldn't do me much good in the long run. I'd still be in prison for life. Days passed. I was arraigned, then driven by federal marshals to a maximum security federal prison to await my trial. I was kept in solitary, away from the general population. I've garnered something of a reputation among my fellow inmates. They have mixed opinions of me. I've received something like rock star status from some of them who idolize me like a celebrity, a hero, because most of my victims were rich, fat cats. Other inmates want to kill me because several of my victims were children. I'm kept away from them for my own safety. I can't help but smile at the bitter irony of it. Now I know how my dad must have felt before he got a shiv stuck in his throat. I've even received fan mail from people rooting for me in my crimes, women who want me to father their children. The world's a crazy place, isn't it? Psychiatrists and psychologists have interviewed me. I tell them about my childhood, my life, and the killings, but not why I did it, not even when they press me. They each have their own theories and opinions as to what drove me to do it. Some argue that I did it out of class resentment and anger, or because of my abusive childhood. They argue that the brain damage I endured from the beating as a child affected my conscience, my ability to tell right from wrong. Some even argue that the brain surgery Dr. Steiner performed to restore my vision impaired my mind somehow. That one's probably as close to the truth as any of them. There's not much more to say. The verdict is tomorrow, and I have a good idea what it will be. And the sentencing? Lethal injection. I sit there in my orange jumpsuit in the courtroom, feeling the burning red eyes of the 12 shadow-faced jurors, and the shadow-faced prosecuting attorney, and the shadow-faced judge on me, blazing with vengeance. I don't think I'll even make it that far. They are in the correctional system too. Shadow-faced inmates and COs. I think they have something much worse in store for me after I reach death row. But I'm not going to give them the satisfaction. I would tell the world what was going on, tell them the truth, even if most of them dismissed me as a madman, if only to reach the few others like me who might be out there in the world listening. A rallying cry to the troops, so to speak. But journalists are not being permitted to interview me. Still, I have a way to get this story out, to the few who might read it anyway. I'm not supposed to have internet access, but I bribed one of my human guards with some cash I smuggled in on me. Don't ask me how. And he agreed to provide me with a tablet for an hour a night for 2 weeks, so I could write all this down and post it on Reddit no sleep, a little at a time. I'm almost finished now. There's really nothing left to say. Except, like I said before, I'm not going to give those soul-sucking, shadow-faced motherfuckers the satisfaction of doing me in themselves. You see, tonight I slipped the guard a little extra and bribed him for something else I'm not supposed to have. A razor blade. To the families of all of my victims, I apologize for all of the grief and suffering I have caused you. But I don't apologize for my actions. I know you all hate me, and will rejoice at my death, and will probably feel cheated by my suicide of seeing me rot away on death row for years to come. Will feel robbed of the satisfaction of witnessing my death firsthand from outside the chamber, looking through the glass at me strapped to a gurney. You'll probably think I'm a coward for taking the easy way out. I'm not asking for your forgiveness or understanding. I just want you to realize your loved ones were already dead long before I got to them, replaced by something that looked and sounded and acted like them. But wasn't them. Was in fact something far more terrible and evil, than you can imagine. To all of you out there reading, know this. This is all real, and these things are out there, walking among us, feeding upon us, lurking in our society, invading our civilization, spreading and growing in number. Their influence goes all the way to the top. They've infiltrated the highest offices of our government. Some of them might even be people you know and love and trust, maybe even someone in your family. Maybe even someone you sleep beside every night. I don't know what their ultimate goal is, but whatever they're planning, it can't be good. So I guess this is goodbye to all of you who have followed my story and read it this far. I'm going to be shuffling off this old mortal coil, as some writer or another put it, and plugging into the blackness. But I'm not afraid. After all, I know blackness all too well.
Welcome back, my darling deviants. Well, tell me, did you enjoy that twisted tale? Of course you did. I knew you had that air about you, that hunger for the horrific and the macabre. So, did we spook you? If not, then file a complaint with our complaint department detailing all accounts of non-spookiness you found in this video, and we'll get back to you in 2 to 3 millennia. Give or take a business eon or two. However, if you've enjoyed what you've just heard this evening, then make sure you leave a like on this video and annihilate that subscribe button. Such a small act of obedience is exactly what we need to put the food on the table around here. There's only so many days we can have refried kidney and toe jam hash before I'm absolutely sick of it. Spoiler alert, that ship sailed long ago. Now, I must bid you adieu. I've many things to take care of, and this outro is eating into my day off. Run along now. Have no fear, we'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday to bring you another terrible tale. Go forth, my ghastly gang, and stay spooky.